We're at the University of South Alabama Library's Marx Library Auditorium, and we are so grateful to see y'all here tonight. This is a great crowd, and it's a great topic, so let's get going. My name is Paula Webb. I'm Outreach and Communications Librarian here at the University of South Alabama, so if you want to ever visit, feel free to visit. Come hang out with us. Our door is always open to the public and available to people. Parking is free after 4 and on weekends. So feel free to come and visit at any time. Now today, our panel that we're introducing to you guys today. Now these lovely ladies did have their books for sale and also talking about their events at their houses beforehand. They're going to stay afterward. So if you want to get personal and ask more in-depth questions about their haunted places and the haunted things they've seen, you can do that after the show. So, the first person is Elizabeth Parker. She's author of Haunted Mobile and other wonderful books. Mary Palmer is author of the upcoming book, The Boyington Oak, A Grave Injustice. Patsy Hamilton is director, board president of the Richards DAR House, and she's going to share about her ghosts. And Mary Newman is the manager of Oakley House, and she's going to talk about her ghost and the upcoming event that they have on November 1st. So we've got a lot of great talent here tonight, so enjoy. Now each person will share about 5 minutes of their specific place, and starting with you.
Hey everyone, my name is Mary Newman, and I am the museum manager at Historic Oakley House Museum. I've been the manager for about 2 years now and worked at the museum for 4 years total. I actually started working with Oakley while attending this university. I have a degree in history, and I started first as a volunteer and eventually just fell in love with the place. I've come out to do a few things like this before, but I do have to admit this is the first time doing it for Ghost. Usually it's about the history of the house. Oakley is one of the oldest homes in Mobile, first built in years 1833 through 1837. So I get called out a lot for that. Also for our antique collection, as we have a large collection from the 1750s through the early 20th century displayed in the house, belonging to the Historic Mobile Preservation Society. And other times it's just about how pretty Oakley is, because to be honest, it is one of the most beautiful homes in Mobile. It's one of the most famous examples of Greek Revival architecture in our city. And it also has many mature live oak trees on the property, most of which are in the 200-year-old range. They're actually older than the home. In the daytime, that makes it absolutely stunning, and in the nighttime, it makes it very, very creepy, which is where the ghost stuff comes in. I want to start, before I tell you about the ghost of Oakley, by admitting that when I started volunteering and then working there, I did not believe in ghosts. I thought that, there was maybe some backing to it, but I did not think that you could have tangible, physical, and interactive pieces of people left behind in a place after they died. Working at Oakley has completely changed this opinion. So the very first time at Oakley that I really started to believe these ghost stories, about 6 months after I started working there, I was actually in the building next door that day. It's our Minnie Mitchell Archives building, and I was an intern at that time, so I'm working hard on my project. And for the first time, I was sent over to Oakley by myself to get some paperwork. So I'm walking up to Oakley for the first time alone. I see this woman staring at me from the upstairs window in what's the original entrance hall, walking up towards the house all gun-ho. And I remember thinking I didn't recognize this woman, which is odd. I'd been there for a while, but I just assumed it was a volunteer or another staff member that I had not met. So, and also clearly remember what she was wearing. So she was wearing kind of old-timey clothes, very modest. You couldn't see all the way to the floor, but she's wearing a big old poofy skirt, like a hoop skirt. Kind of odd for a day. It was not actually open to the public. So as I get to the back door, it's locked up. The building was fully armed, and there is no possible way someone was actually in that building watching me without the MPD coming out to see us. We have MPD people in the crowd. They can assure you we're pretty well armed. They come out when things move in there. So that first day, it's pretty easy to explain that away. Got a little harder the next time I saw her. Got even harder after I started talking to the neighbors and realized that apparently that is the most commonly seen ghost of Oakley. She is very obvious many evenings. So some of you guys might have noticed the Oakley bells we have in the audience. Those are costume guides at Oakley. They're high school girls. I had one of the neighbors tell me how wonderful our bells were and how hardworking they are, which I completely agree with. And then I got kind of creeped out because she started talking about how the costumes had changed, and she was seeing this young woman with these long sleeves that you see our girls don't have. And they was up there every night. She was just so impressed with this girl. As I wore my belts. So that's one of the first ghost stories that I've seen there, but I've seen all sorts of things I can't explain. We're talking things from a broken music box playing on its own. You hear voices in that house when nobody's around to be making noise. Music will start playing on its own when nothing's in there to make it happen. I've seen furniture move on its own and playing cards that'll be in one position, and then the next day I come in and it looks like somebody's in the middle of a game. And even what looks like a shadow of a man, but there's no actual man attached to it. So many, many things. And I have since given up on trying to explain all this away. So in addition to all those things, that is stuff I also in my daily life at Oakley. We, within the past year or two, have recently started allowing paranormal investigators to come back into the museum. So for the very first time to the public, this is going to be open on November the 1st. Some of our lovely volunteers agreed to host segments with you guys. So for 30 minutes, you can come in and do a real investigation with us. It's going to be $15 a person, and there'll be ghost stories with the Oakley Bells before and after. Somebody that sat through a few of those, I can assure you're going to see something. So I think I'm close to my 5-minute mark. I'll pass this along to the next person if y'all are ready.
My name is Patsy Hamilton, and I'm the board president for the Richards DAR House. Now, I have to admit this, I haven't been involved with the Richards House but about 6 years. I was a teacher, and when I retired, I became active in DAR, and the Daughters of the American Revolution helped to serve as docents for the Richards House. At any rate, the Richards House was built in 1860 by Captain Charles and Caroline Richards. Now, the couple that built the house had 12 children. The last child born in the house, now not all the children, 12 children were born in the house. The last child who was born in the house only lived to be 3 months old. And sadly enough, Mrs. Richards died just within days after his birth, and his name was Joseph. Anyway, the many guides have had experiences at the house with either hearing voices of children, which we would, in our area where the Richards house is located, there are no children. It is either adults or businesses surrounding the house. So when there have been times when the guides who are downstairs in the kitchen area would hear children laughing or singing upstairs. Now, I have not experienced that myself, but according to many of them, they've heard those sounds. And really, we were kind of put on the map for paranormal investigations several years ago when one of the guides who was there had come into the house, and of course we have an alarm system, and she had turned it off, and she went into the second parlor. We have two great big parlors, and she went into the second parlor to turn on the overhead light, the chandelier, and she turned to face a mirror to check herself, make sure her hair hadn't gotten blown or whatever, and she felt uncomfortable, and behind her was an individual sitting on a green sofa that is still, the sofa is still in our house. And he was just kind of smiling at her. And she, it took her a few seconds to think about this. Was this really happening or whatever? And then when she turned back around to look again for the second look, of course, he was gone. Now, whether that individual is who we call Captain Richards, the individual who built the house, or whether that individual is someone else that we call Uncle Willie, we're not really sure. Now, William was one of the 12 children, and he had lived in the house up until, Captain Richards died in 1894, and William had lived there through 1893. So we're really not sure, but it some point, we had a group who came in and they were taking photographs one night. Well, when they arrived at the house, it was not storming, it was a beautiful night. But they had placed a camera on a tripod in one of the upstairs bedroom, the master bedroom actually, where Captain Charles and Caroline would have slept. And all of a sudden, the weather turned strange, and it was a storm. It started to storm, and there was some lightning and that kind of thing. And while the tripod was set up, some pictures were snapped. And in fact, I have the picture with me, which you can examine closer when you come to the table after this and look at, and you can see a shadowy figure there. And the individuals who took the picture were not the paranormals. This was another group who just came in to record what was happening. So we feel that probably it's either Captain Richards in his own bedroom or it's Uncle Willie. So most of us who are there during the day, we really don't normally have any experiences in the daytime, just as your house. The nighttime, it gets a little creepy in there. And we have had, just recently, we had a ghost tour, and there was some activity during that time with flashlights. The ghost, I don't know if any of you have ever been to one of the paranormal experiences, but they place flashlights on the carpets in the room, and they ask questions, and they encourage any entity to turn on a flashlight. And I've been to at least 2 of those events, and the flashlights do come on and off when they're asking questions. And last year on one of the events that I attended, the question was asked by someone who actually is also a guide at the house. She wanted to know if Uncle Willie was there. Well, the red flashlight came on and off. And then someone asked, well, where are you? Because they had a little voice box also in the room with us that night. And all we could hear, all of us there heard the word sewing, like that. And on one of the dressers in that room was a pin cushion that had needles and pins in it. So of course it just gave us chills, because I mean we could actually hear the voice, and it was pretty clear. But there are numerous other, I could go on and on about all the different stories that the guides have told, whether they have smelled the pipe at the back door of the house, and Captain Richards apparently smoked a pipe, or whether there are marbles on a bed in the upstairs boys' bedroom. And when one group of paranormals came, they had taken a paper and drawn circles on it, and then they had placed marbles on the circles, and they were trying to communicate with the children. So they, said, if there are any children in here and you want to play with the marble, move the blue marble or move the yellow marble. Well, some of the marbles moved, and then the paranormal investigator said, well, if you move the red marble, you can keep it. Well, it moved. And the next day, when the guides came in, the marble was gone. So I'm going to leave that up to you to decide. But I would encourage you to come to the Richards house. It's a wonderful house, and I don't believe any of our ghosts are evil at all. I think they're happy ghosts. They do touch hair sometimes. In fact, there is a member who's also a guide who's here today, and she was there recently, and she thought the person next to her had touched her hair, but the person next to her had not touched her hair. So we think there's one ghost who really likes to play with hair. And so if you come, you might have that experience. So.
Boo. I'm Mary Palmer, and I'm just going to tell you about the story. In 1834, unqualified jurors and circumstantial evidence determined the fate of printer, poet, and musician Charles R.S. Boynton, a 19-year-old who was hanged in Mobile's Church Street graveyard for murdering his roommate and best friend, Nathaniel Frost. He protested he was innocent until his dying day, and he said an oak tree would grow on his gravesite. To prove it, it did, and it's still there today. Still stands today. Writing this creative nonfiction story was quite a challenge, and it was eerie. I had to learn all about the way things were then, setting the Boynton himself, put myself in his shoes, and research, learn about clothing and diction, and along the way, many very weird things happened. I'm not sure I believe in ghosts, but I have one named Ezekiel in my house, and Elizabeth has written about him, and she's published it online, but it will also be in a book, upcoming book. Okay. One day, Maureen McClay and I were working on the foreword, and I heard a knock. I was about 10 feet or 15 feet from my back door. I went straight to it, and nothing was there. I went to the front door, nothing was there. She heard it too. We looked at each other and wondered about, was this Charles? The second thing, Shannon Brown, my editor, researcher, and general helper, her computer and mine lost files. Up on? We got it now?
Yeah.
Okay. Once her printer wouldn't copy the book, but it would copy and print everything else, and other documents were coming out just fine. Emails wouldn't be delivered. She'd send me one, and I wouldn't get it. I'd send her one, and she wouldn't get it. I know this can be years of error, but these were just different. And third, in a writing class, 3 different times, Shannon saw someone outside, a shadow like, and it was right after she had spoken about the book. And she said it quickly evaporated. Charles Ghost? Who else? Another thing, handwritten material. I would have a piece of paper and it would just disappear. And I had one I've never found yet. It was right in front of my face and I couldn't find it. Then also a pen that I always kept right next to my bed would disappear. And Shannon and I felt that Charles was messing with us. A fifth thing, one unexplainable happening was when I was checking a bag I have over there, and this is really, really odd. It's a bag that I keep things in to go to presentations for this book and for other books. And I looked in that bag, and I found this book, Ghosts of the Carolinas. It was one that one of my sons had given to me in the 90s, and I had no reason for that book to be in that bag. And I read it all the way through, and I thought, only thing I can think of is Charles is trying to get me to believe in ghosts. So who knows what's going on? It was inscribed as this is, I hope this will help, and I don't even know what it was about, that it was supposed to be helpful to me, because I wasn't writing any book like that at the time. Okay. Also, I wondered if it was coincidental that I once worked in the print shop and Charles was working in a print shop, and I wrote columns for newspapers. Was that a foreshadowing that one day I'd write about a printer, a murderer, or accused murderer, let's say, who had poems published in newspapers? One night in bed, I heard a voice saying, "Mary, this book is going to be big." And I wondered if Charles was pleading his case. So you don't know if these things are coincidental or not, but Boyne kept repeatedly insisting, sooner or later, I'll be vindicated. Now, almost 2 centuries later, we located 3 or more descendants, so we are thinking about trying to get Charles a posthumous pardon and clear the family name. If you know anybody who can help, let me know. So I think that would be a good thing to do, because there's always something. These things are spooky that happen. The mark on the grave has disappeared twice, and we want to get that one replaced. So we just hope that something will come of these things that can clear the family name. And I do have 2 people here I want to introduce. Shannon Brown, she's been my big helper, and Preston. Y'all stand up. Preston Boynton from Dothan. The book will be released soon, but I'm taking pre-orders afterwards tonight, and the first 50 copies will be numbered as collector's items. And if you want any more information, it's on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, independent sites, and Michelle Matthews did a piece on this for AL.com. So I'm available for presentations and saying thank you so much for your interest. Thank you, Paul.
Of course, I'm at the end of the rope. I'm at the end of the rope. Thank y'all for coming. I'm Elizabeth Parker. I write about ghosts and hauntings. I love them. I am an unrepentant believer and have had experiences all my life. I also love history, and I think any location with a ghost, particularly an historic ghost, is blessed to have a living illustration of time and place. I was born able to see ghosts and sense energy, but those skills were extra weird when I grew up, so I shut them down to try to fit in with normal people. So I really do understand when people say, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I know exactly how that feels. When I first wrote my books, I really couldn't tell you what ghosts were or why they appeared or how they worked. But at this point, I have developed some theories, mostly due to the personal relationships I have had with many ghosts. Above all else, I believe strongly that we are all connected. And when ghosts or unexplained events enter our lives, it's our natural reaction to be frightened because we've always interpreted this other reality as death. But life is energy, and you cannot kill energy. And our paranormal encounters, I believe, always have something to teach us. And the spirit world is a vibrant dimension and continuation of divine life force. Since I wrote the original Mobile Ghost books, my own spiritual bio has expanded to include mediumship. I'm also a Reiki master and I read tarot, all of which allow me to finally work with the ghost instead of just writing about them. I love helping people and ghosts understand each other. Unfortunately, people with ghost problems are less willing to be public with their stories as are people who just have ghosts hanging around the house. It's a little bit more personal and a little more sensitive. But it's always great to work with people, whether I write or talk about it or not, and help people and their ghosts understand each other, even if that is extra weird. I'm really glad you're all here tonight. I hope that you guys have brought stories or questions about your own experience, and I hope you'll share. And I do want you to know in advance that I do not think you are crazy.
Wow, didn't realize we had so much here, did you? Well, now we're opening up to questions, this is your opportunity to ask a question of our panel. So if you will just stand up, ask your question, and then if there's a particular person you have it in mind, we'll give the mic to that person to answer it. Okay. Don't be shy. Oh, come on.
That one over. Yeah, I live in Midtown, and I've heard and
Can you come in a little bit more, please?
I live in Midtown Mobile, and I've heard and seen, experienced firsthand, and also I've heard anecdotally that there's a lot because there's a country girl buildings or homes over there. There's a preponderance of hauntings in that neck of the woods, as well as OGD, as well as, the place in downtown Mobile. Is that something you've heard about or reported on or seen about? It seems like every other home in our neighborhood in that area seems to have some kind of anecdotal evidence of hauntings or stories about that, urban legends. Oh, I can't tell you this, but I've seen that, this, that, and the other thing. I mean, what's been, since you're both four authors here from the local area, I'm guessing, what's been your experience with that type of thing?
Well, his question is, he lives in Midtown. The summary of it is, he lives in Midtown, and he wants to know if there's any ghosts or any experience with ghosts hanging out around there. Now, does anybody want to answer that question?
My favorite Midtown ghost story involves a goat.
Oh, really?
ghost of a goat with a lady accompanying the goat. Midtown is very haunted. All of Mobile is very, very haunted. It is as haunted as Savannah or New Orleans or any of our other great southern cities, partially because of our extremely long history. I think partially because of our proximity to water, which has a lot to do with electrical frequency and vibration. And because we are also willing, I think, culturally more willing to believe in them. They're also, in Mobile, it's a strange phenomenon where the ghost will wander around largely, and I know over by Oakley, in the neighborhood right in front of Oakley, on those streets, there's a young woman who wanders from house to house. So she's often reported, I don't know if she visits Oakley too, but she does go back and forth. We've had people living in this area for so long, even before statehood, we had such a long colonial period. And people tend to stay. I think they stay because they have unresolved issues and unhealed wounds. But often people dismiss ghosts and apparitions as being this odd event in a box, like turning on your TV and finding a rerun of a movie that you've seen a lot of times. And sometimes that is the kind of ghost that you get. Sometimes a ghost or apparition is really an event that's impressed into the atmosphere of a place, and it plays like a tape loop under certain conditions, and it happens over and over again. But other ghosts are very conscious and simply living in a different dimension, and it is not a place in a box. It is a living dimensional world, in my experience, as clear as ours. But what's most interesting about people who have ghost experiences is it's always for a reason. I've never worked with people or interviewed people where their ghost experience happened in a void. There's always going to be a tie-in between the people that are experiencing the ghost and phenomenon and the experiences, because I think we're all energetically connected. And if you assume that we are all energetically connected and we're all sharing a frequency, as we all are in a neighborhood, in a town, in a location, then often as receivers we pick up broadcast on those frequencies. And if there's no linear time, then things are broadcast over and over again. Everything's out rotating in energy. Everything comes. So it's not like Dickens where the ghost appears on Christmas night to take care of a certain purpose and get the job done. I think the ghosts are constantly revolving and coming in and out of our dimension. And I think if you are lucky enough to see a ghost or experience it, you shouldn't be so quick to dismiss it. It does have relevance to your real life because we are all connected. And Mobile is very, very haunted, especially Midtown.
Here's something to add to that.
Thank you. Okay.
So if you're asking this because you're wondering about your house specifically, the History Museum of Mobile keeps a binder that covers most of the early deaths in Mobile and how they happened. So if you're trying to track down any specific information, it does mainly focus on downtown due to the dates, but you might be able to find something there in the research library.
Well, I know that's
My ghost is named Ezekiel. It has nothing to do with my book, and I saw him once, and I didn't even believe it then. I'm still doubtful, and I haven't found the reason. But I went to the courthouse one day to research whether there was records of the hanging on the property or something. I found nothing because I parked for the meter. I had to keep running back to the meter to avoid getting ticketed. So I'll have to keep searching, I suppose.
Also, Mobile is just so super deathy because we've had so many plagues. And in my research, I spoke at the History Museum. One time I did some research about that, and I even found out at the time, in the 19th century, Mobile was trying so desperately to stay open as a port that when we would have one of our numerous and all the time great yummy plagues, yellow fever, cholera, all the things, typhoid that ran through 19th century town, often the city would not report it or would delay reporting it because they had to keep the port open. it was such a huge source of revenue, not just for Mobile, but for the whole state. So people died right and left from plagues, and people were often buried. And you would go out to the edge of town to bury folks, and then town kept creeping over the edge of town. So there are burials. Downtown Mobile up to Midtown is absolutely littered with graveyards and burials that you may not realize are there.
Okay, great question, thank you. Next question.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know how much you know about like the Pensacola Lighthouse or any like first-hand experience there, but just like my background and my story, I was there at a haunted house. They decorate it like every year. They might not do that anymore, but that was when I was like 8th grade or so. And so I took a photo with my like iPhone 4, I guess when that would have been out. And I saw in the photo a lady like in a dress like I was wearing. She had a very high waist and a poofy dress. And it was like a woman in like a wedding gown. And so I was just wondering if maybe you had any like experiences at maybe the Pensacola Lighthouse.
Did everybody hear her okay? Anybody?
I don't have any personal experiences at the Pensacola Lighthouse. Do you, James? It's famously haunted, but you have to remember, just because there's a lighthouse there now, there could have been other things there or in the area before. But it's super interesting if you do go somewhere and you're taking photos and it's a haunted location, or you'll capture things on your camera, or just as in the beautiful Richards house, when the ghost that looked in the mirror and in the reflection saw the figure on the sofa that she could not see with her eyes visually looking straight at it. There's a huge difference between how cameras and lenses bend, or mirrors bend light and process light. And even when you see things out of the corner of your eye, but when you turn to look at them straight on, you don't see them because your visual process is different. So anywhere that you go and you take photos and things, don't dismiss or think that you haven't gotten anything, because things will show up on cameras, on iPhones, digital cameras, regular cameras. But go home and load them onto your computer, because very often you'll think that you don't have anything when you're just flipping through that tiny little screen on your digital camera or your iPhone. And when you get home on the monitor, you'll have images.
Next question? Yes, sir.
Is there any experience with Octavia Laverne or her husband Henry?
Not that I've had. I'm not
Let's let her answer that one first. They have the painting.
I've never had an experience with Octavia or her husband or her parents. We have all their paintings on display, and they've never shown up on our investigators. Anything that they've used, I won't say 100% for sure that they're not. But really, the Octavia expert in the room is Paula here, not me.
Hi. If you don't know, I'm in the middle of writing a book right now about Octavia Walton Laverne and her entire life. So, I'm sorry, there's somebody in the crowd that's like, oh wow.
She's infatuated with Octavia.
Well, I'm in the middle of it now, working on the manuscript, and I've actually we've discussed this question, whether or not Octavia has a spirit. And we talked about it, and we think she doesn't because she travels. Spirits tend to harbor places that they stay an extended period of time, and Octavia was a very world traveler. She never stayed very long. Like, she lived in Mobile, but she would leave during the summer to go up north. And so she was from Pensacola. She was Pensacola, Augusta, Georgia. So she was all over the place. She was in New York. So she traveled quite a bit since never settled. Is that correct? Am I remembering that right? We talked about that.
We did talk about that, but just as with how Mr. Boynton may be helping Mary with her work.
Yes. Exactly. Yes, I do feel Octavia's presence. I will have to admit. And if you want me to describe her, she's about this big. She was very petite. Soldiers in Pensacola, Florida, when they would come to see her, they would drink wine out of her shoe. So it was like I know it gross, right? But they did. That was like a thing, and I was like, why is it a thing? But it was. He said it was spring break. But she was a very petite person, and so everything she was very graceful and petite, and so I picture her around me. I actually have had somebody tell me that the spirit of Octavia is around me, and it wasn't these ladies. So it was somebody completely different. So we shall see. Octavia should be coming out in the next couple of years, so just keep your eye out. Okay, another question? Come on. Out of all these wonderful people, oh, I see you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so do you have any experience with Blakely State Park? Yes. Yeah, I think a lot of people do, and my question is, I'm wondering if it's indigenous people native to that land, or if it's more military where the stagecoaches came through and they had battles. So I'm kind of curious about that.
I've felt some odd things when I've been out there before, but I can't really answer that for you. I can add to that, make it more complicated for you. That's an old ghost town, and that used to be a town that's no longer there. So it could be any of those burials there too. So there's still a little tiny graveyard there. You go searching for it, and that's not soldiers. That's townsfolk. So if I had to guess a place in Baldwin County that's haunted, that would definitely be high on my list.
Now, anybody know that a little bit of history of Blakely? Blakely got wiped out by yellow fever.
Right.
And the Blakely could have been Mobile. We could have been over there. There was a serious competition for a long time between Mobile and Blakely, and Mobile only won because we didn't catch yellow fever. So, congratulations. Okay. Oh, here we go.
Blakely is extremely haunted. I've had friends who've been out there, and I've been out there myself and gotten photos and had strange experiences. And one man told me once about camping out there one night, that he had camped and had fallen asleep when he felt someone march up to him and grab him by the shoulders and jerk him upright straight, which he always, that he left, which he thought was Civil War related. He felt like it was probably some soldiers. I have friends who won't go out there anymore. My favorite Blakely story is when my son was in Webelos, and I was waiting for him to finish his scout meeting, and they were, I don't know what they were doing scout things, but one of the scoutmasters was talking with another scoutmaster, and this man was an executive, very educated, very professional, and I offhandedly heard him say to his fellow scoutmaster, "I will never take the boys to Blakely again. I will never, ever go there." Of course, I was dying to ask, but it so impressed me that a professional, super high in his position man was like, "Nope, never going back." I think that Blakely is mostly haunted with soldiers in my experience. I've researched the Civil War activity on the Eastern Shore because I live there. We live in Spanish Fort, and our house guests are soldiers. And it was so fraught at that time in the last days of the Civil War when they were fighting up there, and everyone was exhausted. And on both sides, they were stopping in between skirmishes to meet out in the middle in the neutral zone and trade, because they were still able to get things from Mobile, goods, cornmeal, newspapers, tobacco, and they would come out, the Yankees and the Confederates would come to the middle and trade with whatever they had, and then they would go back behind their lines and commence to kill each other some more. So it was really fraught. And also, one of my soldier house ghosts who have all been Union, my favorite one was an African-American soldier. And up at Blakely at the end of the Civil War, when they were really running out of troops to get down into the depths of the South, a lot of the black Union troops were there. And their acts of courage were incredible because they had everything on the line. If they got captured in battle, it was going to be bad news. And a lot of the Union commanders, of course, would throw them out front. with no regard. So my opinion, Blakely, it sifts down into Spanish Fort, all of the battles and the wars, and so my opinion on Blakely is very haunted and definitely Civil War because it is still so fraught and still so haunted.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My experience has been of recent, of late. My son is actually a Boy Scout, a current Boy Scout, and my husband, they camped at Blakely, and my husband said he will not camp at Blakely anymore. He said, and my husband is not from the South, he's from Illinois, and so his family does had an old house that had a ghost, and so he was like, I felt a presence in my tent, and I was by myself in my tent. The boys had their own tent, and he said, I felt a presence with me, and I couldn't explain it, and he said, it was the coldest place I'd ever been, and I'm like, you can't say that that's not something there. You're at Blakely State Park. So I do agree that there is definitely, but my husband of late, and this is less than a month ago, he said, Kate and I will not go back to Blakely.
Well,
Yeah,
people have said they will not go back to Blakely. Who here is now going to go to Blakely? Just checking.
I just wanted to clarify something. I am not an author, so I have a cookbook from the Richards house, but that's it. But anyway, I wanted to just share something real quickly. One of the interesting things as a guide at the Richards house is, you know, people want to come in and hear the ghost stories, but then we have people who come in and they're hesitant to go in rooms, or they'll make a comment to me and to other guides and say, I feel something on my back, or I feel cold, it's very cold walking, especially into the master bedroom. And I've had that happen more than once while I was guiding. And just recently, the other day, a mother and two daughters came in, and one of the daughters would not even walk into the dining room. And I wasn't there. This is secondhand from one of the docents to me. But she just stood there and said, I can't go in that room. And I will tell you that last year when I was at the ghost tour, they have cameras in all the rooms set up. And I was sitting there just listening to some of the conversation that was going on, waiting for the lights to go on and off, on the flashlights. But I looked over to the photo, the picture of the dining room, and there was a huge white light that went through just like that. And of course, the paranormal person said, well, that's an orb. You just saw an orb. And so I don't know whether the dining room has not typically been one of the rooms where people have had experiences. And then when she went up, the same individual went upstairs, and this was like a week ago, went upstairs, she picked up one of the marbles that I mentioned to you before, and she dropped it really quickly and said, they don't want me playing with this marble. So we do there are people who come through our house, and they do feel presence of entities and things even during the daylight, you know. So it's just kind of interesting that we, you know, a lot of things are verified by other people who come to visit the house.
Thank you. Now who's going to go to the Richards DAR house? Okay. Okay, we've got a question. Yes, ma'am. Please stand. Thank you.
Yeah, 6 years ago, me and my husband went to Fort Morgan. I was on the other side of the ammo room, and he asked the president to hit his glasses off his head. It went flying across the room. I was wondering if you guys had any experiences else at the Fort Morgan.
Anybody? Fort Morgan?
At Fort Morgan, no, but I have a very similar story. So also in my early days, before I fully believed in ghosts, this is at Oakley, so it's not at Fort Morgan, but we were setting up for an event we've done a few times called Oakley in Mourning. And we set up for a Victorian funeral, which is done kind of supposed to be for one of the former residents who died. Most people think it's the young woman. Her name is Corinne Irwin. She died in the house in 1859, a combination of typhoid and salmonella. So we were doing this fake funeral for her. We're setting up for it. I was standing in the middle of the parlors, and there's a few people in here who've been to Oakley. These parlors are not small rooms. So we're standing in the middle of the parlor, and the candlestick flew from the mantle and almost hit one of my coworkers in the face. That girl swears she did not believe in ghosts the day she quit. But I have never, ever seen her go back down the stairs that fast. So, not quite the same, but similar experience for you there.
Okay. Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
A comment and a question. So I camped at Blakely. My two boys are in their 30s, they're Eagles. We've camped there many times. I've always felt like Blakely felt a little odd, but never anything more than that. Where I have felt something that I was ready to leave when I walked in was we took the kids when they were in grade school to Fort Mims. And I walked in and I was ready to leave. I didn't say anything, but it was just an overwhelming, unhappy thing. And so, question, is there Fort Mims data? And then what's the data on Dolphin Island, which is supposedly hugely haunted, both the island and Fort Gaines?
Any ladies? Anybody got it?
I've had general feelings there, but I've never had a specific experience.
Those of you that didn't hear, I've been to all the places she mentioned, and I've never had a specific experience, but after spending enough time around the ghosts, you get used to that certain tingle in your neck that pops up when something's behind you and you don't really know what it is, and it's definitely happened to me at all those places. Fort Mims especially, there's something nasty feeling when you go in there. The history is incredible, so I do enjoy it there, but something does not feel right.
I will say that Fort Mims, they have tours also. So don't be afraid to just Google them. And they announce their tours. I think they go every 6 months. They have a big event. And I'm sure there's haunted tours and all of that, like Cahaba. We've got a lot of haunts in this joint. Okay? We got a lot. So don't be afraid to go and take advantage of it. Yes, ma'am.
The secret history tours are occurring too. I'm going to go on one of them as soon as I get some books, and they're on Sundays, and they start at service, and then they go over by Warrington Oak. So they'll be every Sunday, I believe.
What she was telling you is the secret history tours. Has anybody been on one? Okay. So they're wonderful, right? They're awesome. Okay. See, somebody else said it, no, it wasn't me. So, secret history tours, they are online. They announce them, just Google that or go into Facebook and you'll find them. Take advantage of that. That's a really good service to the community and you learn a lot of good history. And the guy does his research. That's one of the things I've learned, that he does do his research and he's accurate. Todd Dunham? Okay. Duran. Todd Duran is his name. Yes, sir.
I have a question. I guess listening, I'm skeptical, not to embarrass my family. But, you always hear of, ghosts from, the past. And I know, Michael Donald, the young black man that was lynched in the 80s, do we have anything, closer to that? Is everything, because that's what I hear, is, everything is, from, I don't want to say antiquity, but from, a time past. And, Michael Donald should be haunting the mess automobile, but just some new things, for something like that.
Well, I think people are less willing to talk about modern day hauntings because usually they're very personal and they're very raw.
Yeah.
People are more comfortable with a little bit of distance to be able to say, I encountered something strange at Fort Gaines. I feel weird when I go to Fort Mims, likely spooky, and we have, historical ghosts in some of our houses. It gives you some distance. When the haunting is recent, it's a little more unnerving and personal. I don't think there's any magic about old historic hauntings or recent hauntings. I know plenty of people who have ghosts in their home, people who have died. It happens all the time. It's just people don't talk about it as much.
Yeah, my dad passed away in 2005, and he had an artificial leg, and I know my wife can say this, when he walked, it'd make an air puffing sound, and you can still hear that on occasion in my mom's house, and that's probably the only thing where I've ever experienced something, because I will hear that just at my mom's house, that puffing sound. Yeah.
They will,
Don't mean to
they
freak
will,
you out.
it's super freaky, and it's
Yeah.
freaky to have the candlestick thrown, and it's freaky to have your glasses left off your head, and it's freaky to hear noises that you can't put a physical cause to. But they're all functions of vibration and frequency, and they're also undeniable, easily identifiable events that get your attention and that you can't pass off to being just some random noise coming in from off the street. Ghosts will be very particular about how they get your attention in a way that you can't put it off to something else.
Question?
Yeah, I would like to maybe respond to that because. Oh,
Okay,
I'm so
wait,
sorry.
go ahead and then him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So I-
you just didn't see him, it's okay.
So I like maybe you can respond to this like a theory that I would kind of add to maybe to like that experience and why we don't seem to experience a lot of modern hauntings would perhaps maybe be like just the history of like cultures and how a lot of people were superstitious during that time period, i.e. the closeness to like religion they had, because I mean knowing now it's much more secular as we grow through this age, and I would maybe assume it would be something like related to just their lives in the past. And because I know my great grandmother, she passed away in my house because I live in Midtown, and my house was built in the 30s, and she passed away 2012, and I know that house is empty. She is no longer there just because of her relationship with God and just because of how such a holy woman she was. So I know she's not there, but I would just like to say maybe it was something like cultural, very cultural.
Entirely possible. That's a good point. Yes, sir. Thank you.
I wondered what you would do if you had a ghost in your house that was giving off like a really negative energy. I had this friend who was living up in Nashville. She moved in with her friend, and there was just this really negative energy in the house. She prayed that whatever it was would get sent to like the basement and just stay there. Her friend had a psychic come over not long after that and said whatever was in the house was in the basement now. So I don't know what the solution was.
Well, you can negotiate with them. I have done that in a home that I worked with my partner. We went over in response to a man who was affected in his home with a haunting that to him was very disturbing and negative, and he didn't understand it. And we were able to go and sort of piece out what was going on. And in so doing, the ghost was not willing to leave, was not ready to leave, because this ghost was very sad and wounded and was a recent ghost of recent vintage, within the last few years, had died, and was so frightened because of her upbringing that she would go to hell, because she didn't express why exactly, but for some reason she felt like she was not certain what would happen if she took that leap into the afterlife, so she just stuck around. And we worked out some negotiations where, first of all, she would leave him alone and not go in his bedroom anymore. And we made a place for her to stay, and we kind of worked it out between the two of them so that they understood each of them understood each other's situation, and it had a good solution. But that's the biggest thing I find in my work with people who have ghost problems, is that it's usually a misunderstanding, and things have to be clarified, and you can work a lot. There are negative hauntings because spirits have free will. I don't agree with mediums who will trick or otherwise fool spirits into leaving or going into the light or moving out of a location. They say the ends justify the means, and that the spirit will be so happy when they get on the other side that it doesn't matter. But I think every spirit has free will, and they can decide where they want to stay and what they want to do. Homeowners have free will too. People who are living have free will and can live in their homes without being bothered. Sometimes you can just say, I don't want to see you, I don't want to hear you, you can be here, but keep to your basement, keep to your side. And usually I would say try to get a medium. It drives me crazy when paranormal and investigative teams go in and don't bring a medium, because I really think you have to get the communication going to get everybody in a better place.
Okay, we can take one more question. One more question. Yes, ma'am.
Me and my mom went on a trip to Louisiana for a ghost tour. We got on the bus and we went to the graveyard for a scavenger hunt. We got back on the bus and we were leaving and it was getting late, like 9 o'clock, and we were walking and they told us about this app that we do. It like you send messages and you ask questions, and like if you get lucky, you can like you get a message back. So somebody asked a question, like if anybody had ever seen like any ghosts of children, and my question was if like y'all have ever encountered anybody of like ghosts of children.
Well, the Richards house is wonderfully haunted, but that's an example of, in my opinion, it's such a happy haunting of the children returning, and where they were happy. They have free will and the choice to come and be there and be happy. There's a house that I've written about where a little ghost girl named Peggy was stuck for a while, and my sense, Peggy's waiting for somebody. In my read on Peggy is that she's waiting for somebody. I wasn't asked to go in and try to work with her or help her. This was just my perception. The thing that you want to be really careful with, because ghost hunting and investigating is so popular, and you can get all the gizmos on Amazon, and you can download the stuff to your phone, and you can ghost hunt. You have to be really careful when you intrude into that world and open that door. Because if you go looking, they will come because they're interested in getting attention and communicating. So it's not so much that these investigations or these tools or things or Ouija boards or spirit boards are bad. It's that people use them and venture into those areas without really understanding what they're doing. And when you do any ghost hunting or communication with spirits, you really need to be considerate about what you're doing, and you really need to read up on it and not just do it as a lark or something fun.
You want to talk about the child with the issues?
Well, we don't know who exactly the children are. Several of the children died up in Claiborne before the Richards even came to Mobile, one or two. So the ones that Joseph, the youngest one, he passed on, he was only 3 months old, but there was a 10-year-old, and I think 4 of the children outlived. Of course, Caroline died young; she was like 44, and Captain Richards lived on to be in his 70s. So the children, we really don't know who they are. They're just some of the children, and they come and go in different times, and can be heard sometimes in the upstairs landing, according to different docents who've heard them laughing or singing. And like I told you, there are no children living in that area, so it just depends. And when the paranormals come in and they try to entice them, there was last week when we did a tour, one of the ladies who was involved, she was, a guest like everybody else who's on the tour, and she started trying to communicate. They'd given her a deck of cards, and she was asking questions, and she was using the cards in her own mind, I guess. We weren't really sure if she was truly getting answers from the children, but she was trying to communicate with the children. But she was not with the paranormal group, so I was a little worried about how that was going to play out. But anyway, so as we said, we do have children. We can hear them sometimes.
My personal theory on that is I think the children are there because Mrs. Richards is there. I don't think the children are stuck. I think the fragment of her personality that is there that died, leaving a 3-month-old baby behind. I think she brings them there. I think they come there because she's there. I don't think the children are stuck or anything, but I think coming and being there at the age of children, even the Richards kids who grew up, I think the children still choose to come at that time to be with her and to comfort her until she decides to let go and go on.
Okay, that's the end of our questions for the panel. Thank you very much. Everybody give them a good round of applause. Now our lovely panel, to give y'all a chance to head out the door to your booths. They're going to be out there. Wait a second, let them go. I know you want to go and buy a copy of their books and get a tour of the November 1st thing at the at Oakley. But
Thank you so much.
But let them head out first.
That makes sense.
Thank you. And then before you leave out the door, we do have surveys. We want to keep having these wonderful events. Have y'all enjoyed yourselves?
Yeah.
Okay, we want to keep doing it. So make sure you fill out a survey. There's a pencil back there. The pencil's free. All right. So thank you very much. And have a great night. Make sure to go by everybody's booth, say hi, ask them more questions. They love it. It's all good.